Hi, welcome to Building Site episode 17. Today we're going to have another look at the login form, and I'm going to try and get that done. We had a bug last time. It was a slight issue, I think, in which I was able to fix. It was to do with, if you remember, we were getting some stack traces, class cast exceptions from closure. Anyway, I've managed to sort those out. But I think we've got one more problem. So I'm going to write a little to-do list now just to explain what we're going to try and do. So first off, we're going to try and add a login form. It won't look like this because we'll need to style it. So for that reason, I'd quite like to bring in Tailwind CSS and show how that we can build that. Turn this light off so it might be a bit clearer on the screen. Build I'll deploy that. And then finally, I'd like to look at adding Swagger UI resources. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because this demonstrates a static resource with content negotiation, which is a feature in the HTTP protocol that we've implemented inside. And this demonstrates OpenAPI. So the idea is, my thinking is, in a tutorial for a new user, they would start with setting up the site configuration. And if they wanted to, they could then proceed to building a login form, which doesn't come with the site. But there's this learning journey where by the time you get to here, you've learned quite a lot. You might be able to start on some more advanced topics. This also shows templating, which, as we know, is causing us a bit of problems at the moment. So we'll have a look at. I'm going to start Emacs, and I'm going to load. I always start this way. I go into the deps.eden of site and jack in. And so this is a local version of site. Now, ordinarily you wouldn't run site on a server yourself because you would use one that's already been set up, because site is designed to be codeless. And so you configure it remotely and you don't need to deploy code into it. Okay, and these are its resources. So we want to go to this resource and log in. Here we are. Now, if you remember last time, we have a secret that we want to hide except for certain users. And we've got a rule to protect that secret. Oh, no, we haven't. No. But what we do have is when you go to the secret and you get a 401, because naturally you can't be let in because there's no rule letting you in, you would then, the site would look up an error resource which we've registered here. This 401 would map onto this unauthorized. And then we have a variant of that unauthorized here. And in doing that, I think I've spotted the issue. Have I? The issue being that when we get bounced to this error resource, what I'm expecting is for this variant to be picked up and us to get a redirect. This unauthorized HTML has a template, which is here. And that's the one that should have some content. And doesn't. I wonder if we can go to unauthorized on its own. No. Because we do need to have a rule that allows us to access that piece of HTML. The question I have is, could the login box be the HTML? The login HTML. Could that be the variant of, could that serve as the variant of the unauthorized error resource? I think I'll keep them separate for now. So the first issue is that we don't have access to that unauthorized. We can't see that. We're unauthorized to see the unauthorized variant. There's the 401. Okay, and just as a reminder, we could add a supplement to add the favicon, which would get rid of that 404 error. It's the favicon.ico. Okay, so let's have a look at our op directory. What we need here is a rule that will let us, can we have a login form rule? I'm going to correct that. I believe that the site tool will replace that login base URL, and it's because I misspelled it. That's why we're seeing it. So let's just focus in on this unauthorized HTML. Oh, that's the template. Yeah, this is the variant of, and you can see that this is, beg your pardon, you can see that this is misspelt. Yeah, so what we'll do we'll use the site tool to deploy our resources again, and now going back here we should see that we've corrected that variant of no, it still says base URL. Now the site tool is a Babashka script. I'll pop that over there. Base URI. Let's try that again. And there we are. We see that site has replaced. I'm not certain which arguments get this treatment of being, which arguments get, oh, we can get rid of that initdb now entirely. No, I don't think we can. Yeah, well, we'll keep that in because it is quite useful to see how to go into localhost, which is what we do manually. We'll keep that for now. Now I was showing when do things get replaced with base URI here. We have a URL here. Asset, post resources. Okay, so when we call post resources, which is what we're doing here, then this file is slurped and is replaced where anything of that string is replaced with the base URI. So that's how that's working. So I think now we can make a fix to that. And now we need a rule. I'll just secure this a bit better. Actually, we don't need to be able to see the template. We need to be able to see this resource here, errors, unauthorized. And let's have a look at, yeah, that's what we have to be able to see. I'm going to put the rule this time in this resources even. Where are the rules usually held? It's going to be something similar to this. Unauthorized. I think we can have a description. I'll put a description in. See if we have any resources that have descriptions. Yeah, we do. Okay. So, don't need commas. The login post handler, okay, so the unauthorized HTML page must be accessible by all. And this is going to be, oh, the path is going to be that. I mean, we could say the URI is equal to this. And the method is get, and we're going to allow it in. So that should give us access to, we want to put base URI there. It's the same thing, but what do we have here now? That's the resource that we want to access. Where do we put the template? The unauthorized. Well, this is put in as an asset, and it looks like this with our redirect. So I think I'm going to curl that. That will be this one here. That's good. Yeah. And if I went to just that on its own, you should see what I was expecting is for that resource to give us a content location header, which we don't have. So just going to put ensure content location header. Right. But that will still go to our login resource there. If we go to secret, we get a 401, and yeah, we get a redirect telling the login form to redirect back to our secret. That's good. So we can do that in a browser. And that's what we want. So we should have a hidden field in the browser here that will tell the login form when the login post handler can pick that up and for a browser do a redirect. Yeah, okay. Well, that's good. Got to carry on with our login process. Back soon. I'm just going to take a quick break. Okay, there's a couple of things I want to demonstrate. What we've seen, three things. The first is that you might be asking, well, what is the point of Site? Why is it different? I don't get it. One thing that Site is a web server. And a web resource, even if it's a file, has bits of metadata. In the Apache server, that metadata is sometimes encoded into the file name. So you might have conventions like ending in GZ. GZ means it's a gzip resource and it would have the content encoding of gzip. But that's a convention. In Site, we can put all of these bits of metadata and more in resources because we have a database record, a database map for each web resource. So that gives us lots of CMSs have that feature, but that immediately gives us a benefit. The second, which we haven't really touched upon, is the ability to put in rules that restrict access. And these rules are written in a language called Datalog, which many authorization systems use similar logic-based programming to restrict access. In Site, that language is naturally Datalog because the language of the database that we're using is Datalog. And so that makes it easy for database programmers to configure the authorization rules. There's a third thing I just wanted to show, given that this is a live stream for developers of Site, not really for users. I mean, this is a really kind of a technical demonstration. I wanted to show how if we were to curl our template, we get a 401. So we can't see our template. And yet, obviously, we still see the template. We still get the template body. That's true for. Okay, that's a bit confusing because we're actually getting, we're getting a 401 trying to see a template, and the template is being used to generate the body of the 401. So that's it's a bit circular, but. So what's going on here? How is it possible for the template engine to see the template and not for anyone else? To answer that question, we have to go into site, the code, and have a look at the Selma implementation. The answer is that the templates, Selma sources the templates directly from Crux, from the database. And we do that with this thing called a URL stream handler. So we give Selma, and this is a new feature in Selma, relatively recent, and it's a feature that I coded and sent to Dimitri, and he's put in a recent version of Selma. So I'm not sure where the commit is. That is fairly recent. Can't see it now. There we are. I've added support for URL stream handler. So I made some changes to Selma to allow it to take this extra option. And if we see what a URL stream handler does, it's a feature which has been in Java for a long time, but the ability to take a URL and override the way that its body is determined, which is called a URL stream handler. Now I'm trying to think where. Here we are. Here's my implementation of it. So we create a proxy. So we are implementing JavaNet URL stream handler as an interface. I put some tracing in here. It's probably not required anymore. But here we're doing a direct lookup of the URL in the database. We're getting its byte. If it has contents, we're converting it to a byte stream, a byte array rather. Otherwise, we just return the body. And yeah, that's how it works. So it doesn't go through any authorization mechanism. Selma has access to all the templates, which is good. And the templates have access to the content model, the template model, which is how you create it now. Okay, let's go onwards. We need to now log in, and if we look at we have a login post handler. Let's have a look at that. That's this one here. It's saying it accepts post as a method, that this is the content type, well, that is acceptable. You can have you can have more than one, and that this is the post function. The expires is for caches. Okay. Try and do that with a post here. So the way that we can do that is we can say user equal foo and password equal bar. We can send that to our login. Now, we're doing a post there. Yeah, we're sending a post. We're sending the right content type. And it's unauthorized, so perhaps we don't have a rule that allows us to log in. I thought we did, but we don't. Well, anyone can post login credentials. That should be the rule. Let's have a look at that. Okay. You might have to debug this. Let's have a look at the logs. No rule count. Just going to check that this request, you can analyze this request. Actually, we take that. The URI is correct. The request method is post. The rule Hmm. Yeah, we're not expecting that there's no matches. So let's have a look and see how. Let's put some tracing in perhaps. So the namespace that we're in for this is not site, it's pass. And we have a thing called a PDP, which is the policy decision point. And this is where there is a rule. We're finding all the rules, and then we match. And first of all, we would see all the rules. Turn that into it. Those are all the rules which we map first. Over. So what we're looking for we could have a look at this database here. We'll call that the speculative DB. And now we can do a crux query on our speculative DB. Something. Okay, let's say it's interesting. I didn't think that we were still putting requests in the database. But here we have a UUID that represents, you can have a look at that, X entity. Well, DB query entity ID. Okay, I got it wrong. DB query. Just there on its own. So how this code works is that it creates a speculative DB, which is a sort of a DB with extra context added to it, and the context is coming in from the request. So it's a database that also contains details of the subject, the person coming in, the request, all the things that we know at that time. And then that's what we make logical, those are all the logical propositions, and that's what we're making logic queries against. So that it's a DB that is the whole database plus the context. And therefore, that's why the rules in Cite cannot be written in terms of anything that you have in your domain, which is super powerful because most authorization systems require you to load them with a set of propositions. It could be the users, the roles, access rights, entitlements, and so on. With Cite, you get to you don't have to do that, which means that data is never stale, it's always up to date. You can keep all of your users and roles in your database, and then you can create rules which can contain statements about your domain as well, which is super powerful. It can have some performance implications, but we think that we can optimize those. And so anyway, I suppose it's still experimental, but personally I haven't worked with an authorization system this simple and yet so powerful. And that makes it super useful for projects where you have authorization needs. Now, it's a pretty old system, this authorization. We built it about a year ago, and the code hasn't changed much in that time, or at least the ideas haven't changed. So I'm a bit curious why it isn't working today. It could be a simple typo on my part. But I'm also a little bit concerned why these exist, because no, I'm not concerned. Okay, that answers my question. I was suspecting that they were all methods that mutate the database somehow. So we build up the request context in Cite. We used to put every single request into the database got full pretty quickly, as you can imagine. So we took them all out, and they're actually all in a cache. That's why we're able to look up requests like this. Actually, we did here. This is how this works, because it comes from a cache. In the event that a method is put, post, or delete, or mutating method in general, perhaps a mutcall in WebDAV as well, anything that mutates, we want to have a record of, because then we can link the new resource, or the change in the database. We can put a link, a graph edge between that and the request that made that happen, and that gives you a nice audit trail for free. So every single resource, you can say, well, who put this in? What's its history? Well, you can imagine with how useful this is. So this is telling me that when I did a put, this URI, which we did not so long ago, we did that on Tuesday, and this was me doing it, and I probably did it with a bearer token. I did it with a bearer token because I used the site tool to put that resource in. There might be more information that we can store with this. There's plenty more in the request, but this is the minimal set. There's a balance to be had about how much we put in the database on every mutating method. So yeah, still not closer to figuring out this bug. So let's have a look. Am I doing something a bit crazy? I might move myself up there, and we'll have a look at the browser, and we'll try and log in, and I'll get my password for this, which is in site local now, which I to my clipboard, and well, and looks like, doesn't look like we get anything there. Do we get the post? Can we there's a way of keeping which I can't remember. There is a way of keeping yeah, here it is, 401. We do we're getting a post, 401 on the post. So that's the same behavior we're getting from curl, which is expected, but worth trying. It will be a silly typo. We could print out make sure that rule, let's have a look at that rule. Curiously, it is the rule, anyone can post login credentials. I mean, it is an old rule that comes in from you remember when we do add in authorization rules, that step, that's where that comes in. And it has a pass target. Underscore site login. Where it comes from. The problem is that we're not matching them. Right, well, I think I might leave that for today on that cliffhanger, and we'll come back to this in the next episode. I probably need a partner to work out why this is returning, or why this rule is not matching. We have some diagnostics, not enough, but actually, that's interesting. That is saying aloud, but that might be for something else. Let's do that again. Yeah, no, disallowed. Well, this is the joy of programming. Endless puzzles. And on that note, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.